3-4. For the next 9 months Tsunade helped the people of Mihara. Most of her duties mainly dealt with small illnesses and injuries that locals got while farming, along with training a very eager and bright young village girl in the art of healing. The girl's name was Kara, who had a surprisingly good amount of knowledge in herbs. Even before Tsunade's guidance, she could easily tell what certain herbs were appropriate for specific ailments. During their stay, Tsunade and Shizune trained their new student in how to treat people in different ways while also expanding her herbal intellect. Kara was a quick study, and after a few months she was good enough to easily handle any of the small infirmities and physical damages that inflicted those around the village. Even so, Tsunade and Shizune offered a helping hand whenever they could and tried to train her up as much as possible. Between medical duties, Tsunade also found her temporary life in the village to be quite peaceful and relaxing. However, the big reminder of her reason being there started to lean its head in as time went on, when she began to show signs of her pregnancy. Although when she did, she quickly used her genjutsu skills to hide her growing belly. It was only released in private, understandably so, to keep anyone outside her little circle from finding out. In the same duration, Hiruzen, Jiraiya and Minato all visited Tsunade whenever they could. They randomly did it 1 or 2 at a time, or all together, by having Minato transport them through his Hiraishin no Jutsu. Not just because of convenience, but because it helped them stray away from any attention if they were careful. However, before this point they knew they had to deal with Tsunade's abrupt appearance in Konoha, since she definitely raised plenty of questions, to say the least. This was solved by a relatively simple cover-up story that was pitched by Minato. The tale that would be spread throughout the public was that Tsunade charged into the village because of Jiraiya's latest installment in his Icha Icha series. After finding out that her former teammate based a character on her recognizable likeness. A character that fell in love with a white-haired toad magician before indulging in plenty of nights together in a heavily perverse nature, she took matters into her own hands. Once her beating was delivered, along with her message to discontinue the character she inspired deep within his dented skull, she was satisfied. Thankfully, the ruse was accepted quickly enough because of the pervert's reputation. Along with his extremely poor physical state that showed up through the hospital's front doors as he was dragged by the blonde Hokage to be treated in intensive care. To anyone that knew of Jiraiya enough, this wouldn't be the first time his less than innocent thoughts and actions got him a good beating from Tsunade, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. And that's not mentioning the various women of past and future years that heaven will get in a good lick or two every now and then on the poor toad sage. Anyway, it was during those visits that the 3 gentlemen noticed that Tsunade had a sort of glow around her, one filled only with the happiness that came along the path of motherhood. Even with almost no contact at all with her over the years, it truly seemed that she was happier than she had been in a long time. This sort of change brought about even more surprise when she said she considered giving up drinking after her pregnancy. Of course. It would be very damaging to consume alcohol during these 9 important months, and being an experienced medic only cemented this fact, but to take the abstinence beyond that really showed the drastic changes she was experiencing. Sadly, when she wasn't happy, she and the others became victims of any mood swings that took over her mind. At any moment she'd be as happy as can be, angry as all hell, and sad to the point of spontaneously crying her eyes out. Fortunately, there seemed to be a constant pattern of Hiruzen and Shizune dealing with the sad Tsunade, while Minato and Jiraiya unfortunately always seemed stuck with the angry one. To the latter two's misfortune, her anger usually ended with them acquiring various physical injuries such as black eyes, concussions, and even fractured or outright broken noses and jaws. Jiraiya got the worst of it when his brain let him go a little too far once again during the Senju's first trimester. When it was obvious that Tsunade's already impressive assets began to enlarge due to milk production. The famous pervert just had to make an offhand comment about his blonde teammate not being able to stand correctly, let alone move. Normally, such a comment could be shaken off with some annoyance, but it was regrettably spoken when anger was Tsunade's main and sensitive mood at the time. The result, to Jiraiya's immense misfortune, was a near 2-month recovery period in intensive care again. Around when Tsunade's second trimester came along, she had her apprentice run a very delicate scan to determine her baby's sex, apparently not wanting to keep the suspense hanging in the air. When Shizune completed the procedure, she happily revealed Tsunade was going to mother a son, causing the Senju to have another of her more frequent and genuine smiles, and Minato to pause in his tracks before promptly fainting. A little while after the Hokage came to, Minato already had a name in mind for his future son, Naruto. The very same name of the main character in Jiraiya's lone non-erotic novel, The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. It did take a little research on Tsunade's part to make sure her son's name came from something that wasn't perverted, but she agreed. Soon after, both Tsunade and Minato took it a step farther by naming Jiraiya and Shizune as Naruto's godparents. Even Hiruzen was welcomed to take on a grandfatherly role in the unborn child's life, most in part from being the closest thing to a father Tsunade had after losing hers during the First War. Needless to say, they were all greatly happy and honored and were looking forward to being important parts in Naruto's life. It was a few months later when the magical moment came and Tsunade's water broke before she went into labor. Thankfully, everyone was prepared and transported the Senju to a private room in Konoha's hospital, one expertly sealed off to everyone but the 5 that had been in cahoots in the last 9 months. With Shizune overseeing the delivery, everyone was excited beyond belief in their own way. Minato himself was believing more and more by the second that this would be the happiest day in his life. If only he knew how significant this day in history would become. Ah! Screamed Tsunade as she was starting to push, fully clad in a hospital gown and a sheen of sweat coating her face. Come on, Tsunade, you're doing fine, Minato said in soothing excitement as he stood next to the mother of his child. Tsunade gulped in more air to let out another agonizing scream. Damn you, Minato. This is all your fault, you bastard, she roared at the Hokage as she crushed his hands that held hers as a sign of support. The blonde male did his best to not grunt in pain, but he couldn't help himself from falling to his knees from the woman's deadly grip. That's it, Tsunade-sama, you're nearly there. I'm starting to see the head, Shizune exclaimed. Just hurry the hell up and get him out of me, Tsunade shouted back. You're doing great, Tsunade. Just a little more and it'll be all over soon, encouraged Minato. Oh, don't give me that. I wouldn't even be in this mess if it wasn't for you, screamed Tsunade. With a sporadic mind in the heat of the moment, she suddenly raised her free hand to strike the young Kage in the face. Before she could hit him, though, Minato quickly used the Kaerimi no Jutsu substitution jutsu, to replace himself with the nearest thing to him which, unfortunately for the target, was Jiraiya, who was quickly launched through the wall by Tsunade's punch. Sorry sensei, but better you than me, Minato thought sympathetically as he gazed at the Jiraiya-shaped hole in the wall. The legendary shinobi's legs were sticking out and dangling over the broken piece of the wall and were the only parts of him visible from his laid position on his back. Luckily, the room he burst into was empty, leaving no one but the small group to hear his groans of misery. Minato was pulled out of his train of thought when Tsunade screamed again. Get this fucking brat out before he kills me, It's almost done, Tsunade-sama. Just one more push, Shizune eagerly encouraged. You heard her, you're almost there. You can do it. Minato added with a growing smile. Tsunade homed her honey brown glare at him. Shut up. I'd like to see you try and push out a brat that doesn't want to leave, It was but another minute or so when Tsunade gave one final shout of exertion and the first cries from a baby silenced the room. Shizune wasn't stopped, and with a tender smile on her face she gently grabbed the newborn, cut the umbilical cord, cleaned and wrapped him up in a small blue blanket before handing him to a waiting Tsunade. Just as Shizune handed the baby to her master, she gently said, Tsunade-sama, allow me to introduce you to your son, Senju Naruto. The tired but happy Tsunade gazed down at the still crying baby in her arms with glistening eyes. Hello, little one, she cooed as she brushed her hands over the baby's bright blonde hair and round face, smiling with as much love as she could muster. Soon Naruto stopped crying as he looked to his mother to show his curious and bright sapphire eyes. After what seemed like an eternity of childish contemplation, he finally smiled back, making him look all the more adorable to everyone. Look, he has Minato's eyes, not to mention his hair and face. He's like a mini Minato, Jiraiya said with a chuckle, somehow miraculously getting over his injured state in order to see his godson. Yes, but it looks like he has Tsunade's nose, chin and ears. His skin tone is even a lighter shade like Tsunade's, and his eyes are the same shape as hers, spoke Hiruzen as he came over to see his grandson in all but blood. He's beautiful, Tsunade-sama, gushed Shizune as she looked down at her new godson. She then wiggled her finger over Naruto's face, who was following it around with innocent eyes. He is, isn't he? Tsunade whispered more to herself. She couldn't keep the smile from her face as she took in every detail of her baby. In her mind he was the most adorable thing she'd ever seen, and might as well have been the most beautiful and precious entity in the world. Don't you agree, Minato? She asked without looking away. Definitely, and when he gets older he'll be a killer with the ladies, Minato chuckled with a slight gleaming gaze. Hundreds will be chasing after him. Ha. Like any of those little hussies or tramps are good enough for my sweet little Naru-chan. I'm not gonna let any of them even attempt to sink their claws into him, huffed Tsunade, never breaking eye contact with Naruto as he smiled back and even gurgled a bit as if laughing. This of course caused a series of chuckles to come from the others at the image of Tsunade being an overprotective mother and chasing away all the girls away from Naruto in his teenage years. Tsunade-sama, if I may, I'd like to take Naruto to the maternity ward to make sure that he's in good health. I also want to give you a sedative that will make you sleep for a while so that your body can rest and recover from the strain, said Shizune professionally. Fine, but I don't want anyone but you touching my Naru-chan. Is that clear? Tsunade requested tiredly, the excitement finally getting to her mentally and physically. Of course, I wasn't going to let anyone go near him anyhow, the medical apprentice affirmed before proceeding to give Tsunade the sedative and taking Naruto into her possession. As she walked away, Tsunade was already drifting off to sleep while she started doing a little coddling herself to the newborn. Come on, little man, come with your auntie Shizune and let your mother rest, she affectionately said while walking out of the room with the men following suit. As they left the private room, Minato quickly sealed it with a special blood seal, one that would keep everyone except Shizune, Jiraiya, Hiruzen and himself from entering. When Shizune made her way towards the maternity ward for Naruto's checkup, Jiraiya and Hiruzen finally had a moment alone to give their heartfelt words to Minato. Jiraiya good-naturedly patted his student on the back. Well now, Minato, my boy, I believe congrats are in order. You have a son. How does it feel to be a real father now? Good, it feels good, Minato replied with a proud smile that matched the rest of his happy expression. Hiruzen gripped the current Hokage's shoulder as he took a fresh puff from his now lit pipe. I'm truly happy for you, Minato. You'll make a fine father, no doubt about it. Though things may get rough between you and Tsunade with how you'll raise Naruto, I'm sure everything will turn out well between you. Thanks, Hiruzen. Hopefully everything will work out okay, Minato replied appreciatively. Well, now I think it's time to celebrate, Jiraiya jovially exclaimed. Minato, how about we head back to your place and break out that bottle of rare sake you got from Mitsuno Kuni, land of honey, that you were saving for a special occasion. I'm sure the birth of your son definitely fits under that category. Besides, we can't let that sweet and delectable sake go to waste, now can we? I mean, come on, anything from that country is some of the best stuff around, he ended cheekily. Minato chuckled while nodding. I guess I'll have to agree with you on that one, sensei. Would you care to join us, Hiruzen? I'd be delighted, Minato, answered the sandame. Such a day was very deserving of a celebratory toast. But before the three men could leave, a young Anbu agent with a dog-shaped mask and spiky silver hair urgently appeared in front of them. Hokage-sama, we have just received reports that the Kyuubi has appeared nearby and is on its way here to the village. What? The Kyuubi, Minato shockingly retorted. Damn it, why now of all times, especially since Kushina-chan is away on a mission, Minato thought angrily. He turned his serious gaze squarely onto the Anbus. Dog, sound the call for all of our forces to get ready for an attack. Hiruzen, head to the tower and help organize them all from there. Jiraiya-sensei, I need you to help with the evacuation of the civilians, get them to the shelters as quickly as possible. I'll help set up the frontline defenses outside the village. We absolutely can't have the Kyuubi reach the village or it will destroy everything, ordered Minato with the authority that showed why he was the Hokage. All the men responded, nodded in confirmation and quickly went to follow their orders. It seems that Konoha is now facing its darkest hour. Let us hope that the will of fire will not be extinguished this night, thought Minato worriedly as he shined away and went out to set up the front line of defense for his village. 1 hour later at the front defense line. Only a few miles away from Konoha was the first line of defense where most of Konoha's shinobi were gathered and all were firm to protect their village with their lives. They were all quiet after given the proper orders and plans, their faces both displaying nervousness along with fierce determination as they waited for their target. They didn't have to wait long. From the horizon and quickly traveling in their direction was the Kyuubi no Yoko, the nine-tailed demon fox, the greatest and most fearful of all the biju-tailed beasts, whose strength was rumored to be so great that a single swipe from just one of its 9 tails could raise tsunamis and flatten mountains. Despite the differences in power, the proud leaf shinobi were resolute in standing their respective ground, knowing that they were the ones that would prevent the annihilation of their village and their loved ones from being killed. When they finally made contact, they all fought the fox as best they could, firing off jutsus, weapons and a myriad of other strategies, but it was all for naught. Their attacks just weren't effective enough, and whatever damage the monster sustained quickly healed without any problem. When it became obvious how their military might was faring against their opponent, they simply did all they could to slow it down, costing more and more of the lives of their comrades as time went on. After about 2 hours of fighting, the demon was nearing Konoha and could be clearly seen from the outer walls of the village. It was there at the top of the main gates that Jiraiya and Hiruzen were watching the battle with growing concern. They knew that if something wasn't done soon, then the fox would easily reach their home and wreak havoc upon it. As they watched the struggle continue, they were soon joined by the Anbu captain, who was previously commanding the front line and was called back by Hiruzen to give a status update. The captain, who wore a tiger-shaped mask, awaited the Sandame's words as he kneeled. "Tiger, report," Hiruzen ordered sternly. The shinobi nodded. "Currently, over half of our main forces are either dead or wounded. We're constantly being pushed back further and further, and at the current rate our defense lines will be completely destroyed in about 40 minutes at the least, or an hour at best. Where's Minato? He was supposed to be out there leading them," Jiraiya stated. Ever since the battle started, he's been growing more anxious, especially with the huge lack of Gamabunta or any of the other Great Toad summons. "Hokage-sama was with us when we first clashed with the Kyuubi, but after about 20 minutes into the battle he told me that he was leaving and left me in charge of our shinobi. His last order was for me to have them hold back the Kyuubi for as long as possible. When I asked where he was going, he informed me that he was returning to the village to prepare a jutsu that would stop the demon once and for all," answered Tiger. This of course confused both Jiraiya and Hiruzen. Neither could think of a jutsu that would be appropriate off the top of their heads. Yet, despite their confusion, the Sandame quickly decided to take charge of the situation. "Tiger, I want you to head back to the front lines to aid our forces in holding the Kyuubi back until the Yondaime arrives," he ordered in a commanding tone of voice, with a seemingly powerful aura exuding around him, one that Jiraiya had not seen from his sensei in many years. Nevertheless, it served as a quick reminder of why his sensei was known as the Shinobi no Kami, the god of shinobi. The Anbu captain quickly saluted the former Hokage, acknowledging his orders, and shunshined back to his previous commanding position among his comrades. After Tiger disappeared, Hiruzen turned to Jiraiya. "I want you to follow along with him and summon Gamabunta. Help everyone hold back the Kyuubi with the best of your ability, but be extremely careful. I'll go back into the village to try and find Minato and get him back on the battlefield as soon as possible. Hopefully whatever plan he's cooking up is ready." Jiraiya nodded in acknowledgement and was about to head to the battlefield when he suddenly heard a familiar voice. "That won't be needed, Hiruzen." Both shinobi turned around to see Minato behind them, holding his 2-hour-old son in his arms. "Minato, where the hell have you been, and why have you brought Naruto here? Do you want him to get killed? This is no place for him, and where is Shizune?" Jiraiya exclaimed. "I sent Shizune to help out with the wounded in the hospital since the staff need all the help they can get with all the wounded coming in," answered Minato. "But that still doesn't explain why you brought Naruto here," Hiruzen retorted strictly. A determined gleam appeared in the Hokage's eyes. "The reason I brought him here is because he's going to save Konoha from the Kyuubi." The two older men looked confused, prompting Minato to elaborate. "Naruto is going save Konoha by becoming the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. I left to prepare the sealing." Jiraiya and Hiruzen quickly gained looks of shock. "Minato, you can't. This is your son for Kami's sake," Jiraiya shouted. The new father lost a little of his composure and forlornly said, "I know, but I have no other choice." "Minato, how do you even intend to seal the Kyuubi into Naruto? The Kyuubi is wild and too powerful for any normal funjutsu, sealing techniques, to allow it to be sealed into Naruto. The only person who had the power to suppress a Biju and seal it away in something in this state was the Shodame, and even then he had his Makutan ability to help him," the Sandame stated. "I plan on using one of the Uzumaki's clan's funjutsu, one that Kushina taught me, the Shiki Fujin, Dead Demon Consuming Seal. It should be powerful enough to seal the Kyuubi away." A heavy sense of dread entered the pits of the two men's stomachs. Jiraiya, being well versed in funjutsu himself, said, "Minato, you can't. You know damn well what will happen to you if you use it." The blonde nodded solemnly with the faintest sad smile. "Yes, I know I'll die. But still, how can you expect to seal the Kyuubi into Naruto? From what you told me, you seal the soul of the person into yourself, where the Shinigami will consume both you and the other soul, stated the Sarutobi clan head. I will split the Kyuubi's chakra in two, where the yang half will be sealed within Naruto with the Hypno Shiki, a trigram sealing style, while the yin half will be sealed within me with the Shiki fusion. This will make sure that the evil influence of the Kyuubi will not affect or corrupt Naruto as he grows up. But still, Minato, this is your son. You know what kind of lives Jinchurikis have. They're either turned into human weapons or treated like trash and complete outcasts. The fear people have of the demons sealed away is too great to quell. If you have to seal the Kyuubi in a child, then at least try to consider someone else, Jiraiya said. How can I ask another family to give me one of their children to turn into a Jinchuriki when I myself cannot with my own son? Besides, you can't hope to imagine how hard this is for me to do, sensei. I know full well what kind of life I may be condemning him to, but I have no choice, Minato shouted back. The crack in his usually calm persona drove the point home into the minds of the two men. They knew Minato was the kind of person to follow this path and not waver if he could help it. They both lowered their heads in solemn resignation. Changing Minato's mind didn't seem possible at this point. Jiraiya was the first to break his silence as he gazed tensely at his student. If that's the case, then show me how to do the jutsu and I'll take your place. Naruto is going to need you to be there for him. No, let me do it, Hiruzen cut in, causing the attention to be on him. I've lived a long life and you both have so much more left to offer our village and the world. Thank you both, but it has to be me, Minato stated resolutely. But, Jiraiya started but was quickly cut off by the blonde. Sensei, I'm the Hokage and it's my duty to protect the village. If anyone is going bear the responsibility of placing this burden on Naruto, it's going to be me and no one else. Besides, the jutsu and the alteration needed for the sealing is too difficult to pick up in such a short time. Not to mention it's going to require every bit of strength I have, and while I know you're plenty strong, Hiruzen, I'm not going to risk not having enough chakra to complete the process. Same goes for you, sensei, but even if you have the chakra and sealing knowledge necessary, you won't be able to perfect the seal in time. One little mistake can end up killing Naruto and leave us to deal with the Kyuubi. Both Jiraiya and Hiruzen could only sigh in defeat. There would be no convincing Minato once he got this stubborn. The next 10 minutes were hastily spent helping Minato get everything ready for the sealing. Every small moment that went by filled them all with even more trepidation than the last, knowing they were basically preparing the death of someone, two of them along with many more held dear. The second the preparations were complete, a begrudged silence held itself in the air. However, they couldn't let it last long with the situation at hand and tried to give the best goodbyes they could muster. Hiruzen was the first to step up to the current and soon-to-be former Hokage. His wrinkled visage that normally held wisdom and happiness was broken by yet another dark chapter he'd experienced in his life, leaving a shimmering yet strong gaze in his eyes. Farewell, Minato. You are indeed the finest Hokage that Konoha has ever had. Your sacrifice won't go to waste and will only let our village prosper more alongside Naruto. You'll never be forgotten as a true testament to the will of fire, he said mournfully as he firmly shook the Namikaze's hand with his own while giving a gentle squeeze on his shoulder with the other. Thank you, Hiruzen, that means a lot, Minato replied barely above a whisper. Jiraiya quickly stepped up and gave his student a fatherly hug, trying his hardest to hide the tear that slowly escaped his eye. See ya, brat, he let out a bittersweet chuckle. No sensei could have ever asked for a better student. You have no idea how proud I am of you. Thanks, sensei, you were the best teacher anyone could ask for. That's why I want to ask you to do me one last favor. Anything, just name it, Jiraiya determinedly replied while stepping back and meeting his student's eyes. I have drawn a key to the Hypno Shiki into the abdomen of the scroll toad, Geratora, that will allow you to strengthen or weaken the seal. It'll naturally weaken over time, so it needs to be maintained properly, Minato smiled. It'll even allow Naruto to complete a special jutsu for his own unique use. Sensei, I also want you to train Naruto when he's older. He'll need to be strong enough to combat the threats that he will face in the future. Jiraiya nodded as if given an order. You have my word that I'll do my best, Minato. Hiruzen, if you don't mind, I've made you the executor of my estate. Everything is to be given to Naruto when he is old and strong enough to bear the responsibility, and I mean everything. All I have is rightfully his, and that includes the scroll on how to use and create the Hiraishin no Jutsu. It's locked away in my personal safe inside my estate's library. There are also some other things to carry out after I'm gone. It's all listed in my will and I'd really appreciate it if you could take care of them, Minato requested. Of course, Minato. I'll make sure that your last wishes are followed, Hiruzen replied with a bow of his head. Thank you, the blonde said as he looked down at his sleeping son one last time. Goodbye, Naruto. Know that I love you with all my heart and that my only regret is that I won't be able to see you grow up to become the fine man I know you'll become. He uttered sorrowfully before he kissed him on the forehead in farewell. He turned his away from the others to try and hide the tears that began to freely fall from his scrunched eyes. And hopefully you'll know how sorry I am from placing this heavy burden on you, but it's the only way I know how to save Konoha from the Kyuubi and protect it from the threats that will come in the future. The village will need the fox's power on its side to survive the impending darkness, and you're the only one I trust to hold it. I know you'll rise to the challenge and become the hero you're destined to be. The blonde regained as much composure as he could before turning to the Sandaime. Hiruzen, there is one last thing I need you to do. Please tell the people that my last wish is that Naruto is to be seen as the hero he is for containing the Kyuubi and protecting them from it. If they should not, I beg you to make sure that both he and his mother are safe. I shall, Hiruzen replied with another bow of his head. Minato looked at both men one last back time and gave his best smile. Don't look so down, guys. It's probably best that this jutsu kills me since I'd probably die later on anyway. Once Tsunade finds out what I'm about to do, I'm sure I wouldn't survive her reaction. He chuckled with a sudden chill down his spine. She'd probably kill me in the slowest and most agonizing way possible too. The other two couldn't help but let out a minor laugh, as reluctant as it sounded. They could only imagine what the Mednin would cook up once she awakened to hear the news. Sadly, whatever else that could be said was cut short as Minato quickly made his way towards the battlefield, leaving behind two sad yet proud gazes on his back. When he was near the front lines, he did a few hand seals and performed the Kuchio's no jutsu summoning jutsu, making a giant cloud of smoke appear. It captured all attention, and when it cleared, everyone could see Minato standing on a toad that stood 100 meters high and wore a Yakuza gangster-like robe, along with a pipe in his mouth. A huge dosu, Yakuza sword, on his back and a large scar that went down his left eye. This toad was Gamabunta, the toad boss and the strongest of all the toad summons. Minato, what's going on? Why did you summon me? Gamabunta asked, his voice echoing around him for all to hear. I summoned you to help me fight the Kyuubi, Minato replied seriously. The chief toad finally laid his eyes onto the gigantic fox that was fast approaching them. A deathly serious ambience overtook his being. Minato, you can't expect me to fully defeat the Kyuubi. I may be strong, but the fox is stronger. Yes, I know. That's why I plan to seal the Kyuubi into my son, Naruto, with a special jutsu, although in doing so it will kill me. The admission both shocked and saddened the mighty toad. Over the years he and Minato had bonded just like Jiraiya before him and held a special place in the hearts of all the toads. Are you sure that there is no other way to stop it? He asked feebly. He had a strong inkling that he already knew the answer. I'm afraid not, said Minato sadly as he kneeled and pat the toad on the head. Very well, if this is going to be our last battle together, then let's make it one for the history books. Gamabunta grunted and exhaled slowly. And know that I'll miss you, brat. I and everyone else at Mount Myaboku will always be proud to have had you as our summoner and partner. And I was proud to be able to summon you, Minato replied. Both man and toad then turned their focus on their opponent, fully intent on stopping its warpath. Minato quickly ordered the shinobi below to fall back to the village. They quickly did so after a moment's hesitation and prepped themselves to watch as their Hokage and his summon did battle with the Kyuubi. For several minutes after their first charge, Gamabunta dodged the fierce strikes of the fox's tails before going on the offensive. Suten Topodama no Jutsu, water-style liquid bullet jutsu. He cried out ferociously. The giant shot of water launched towards the fox after its latest attempted attack. The jutsu struck head-on but did little more than soaking the beast's fur. The Kyuubi then countered by launching its tails at Gamabunta once again. Gamabunta went about dodging them one after another and even draw his dosu to deflect some of the mighty appendages. After the struggle persisted for a bit, Gamabunta managed to find an opening and launched a powerful slashing strike. The fox did its best to dodge the attack and escape the worst of it, but wasn't able to avoid a large gash being carved into its side as a result. Ha! Take that, you nine-tailed freak! Cried Gamabunta with a victorious smirk that immediately disappeared a moment later when the wound healed itself before their eyes. The fox then responded with opening its large mouth and began to gather chakra from its body and the surrounding air. The raw energy compressed into a single ball before it was released as one massive blast of energy. "Shit!" shouted Gamabunta as he began moving to dodge the incoming attack. With a mighty leap of his legs he managed to barely scrape above it, but a large portion of Konoha's surrounding forest didn't remain unscathed. The resulting explosion from the impact was devastating among the foliage and timber, causing wooden shrapnel to rain down and leave considerable damage upon the leaf village. Minato glanced at the effects of the fox's overwhelming technique before quickly getting his mind back into the game. "Gamabunta, let's try a little teamwork." "Right." The toad shouted back and prepared another jutsu. "Gameuden, toad oil bullet," he yelled while Minato simultaneously cried, "Katen Enden, fire style flame bullet." The oil that Gamabunta fired acted as an accelerant and provided more fuel for the fire attack that Minato launched, creating a conflagration of far greater power and magnitude reminiscent of a giant flamethrower. The combined attack rushed forward with its unique roar and hit the fox with great force. The pyro offensive quickly covered the Kyuubi's body like a quickly developed forest fire and made it start to yell in pain. When the Konoha shinobi saw this they cheered loudly, believing that the demon had been critically injured, if not killed outright. However, the celebrations did not last long as a massive blast of chakra exploded from the beast and extinguished the fire covering its body, creating a small crater around it from the outward force. Trees were uprooted and blown away along with various debris and many unfortunate shinobi that were within the shockwave's range. Once the violent moment passed everyone could see the massive charred burns on the Kyuubi's body, making it look like black was the fox's natural fur color. Sadly, just like before, red chakra began to envelop and heal its body. Before the wounds could be fully healed, Gamabunta took advantage and decided to delay the fox by grappling against it in a strong amphibious grip where a battle of dominance began. With simply trying to keep the fox in place and not overpowering it, the toad was able to hold out long enough to let Minato get close and use the Shiki Fusion. "Now, Minato. This might be your only chance to use it," Gamabunta shouted as his struggle continued. "Right," Minato cried back as he did the seals. "Shiki Fusion," he shouted. The unsettling form of the Shinigami suddenly appeared behind Minato, its arm piercing through Minato's chest with no hesitation. The ghoulish appendage continued towards the Kyuubi and split its chakra in two, sealing the yin into the Hokage while the yang was sent into Naruto where the Hekno Fun Shiki appeared on his form. "It's done," Minato peacefully thought with a sad smile plastered on his face as he felt the Shinigami pulling his soul away. "I leave the rest as well as the future of Konoha to you, Naruto. I know you won't fail me. Make me proud." The deed was done and Konoha was saved as Minato's soul and the fox's yin chakra began to be consumed by the Shinigami, sentencing the now former Hokage to an eternity of battle inside its being. The great Yondaime Hokage was dead, but he passed on with a final smile adorning his lips and the knowledge that everyone was safe. The future was unknown to all, but he felt that it was safe in the hands of his son. After Minato died, the Kyuubi's body fell to the ground before all of its remaining chakra erupted in one massive shockwave. The power behind it forced Gamabunta back a bit, making him move in place to protect the blonde father and son from any physical harm. The remaining Konoha shinobi that watched everything conclude were also forced to the ground as even more damage came upon their village. But at this point they'd take it if it meant the fighting was over. Once the dust settled and silence reigned the air, the giant summon sorrowfully gazed upon Minato and Naruto. "You were truly a great summoner and friend to all of the toads, brat. Hopefully your son will become just as great as you, if not greater," he said in somber finality before returning home in a puff of smoke. Soon after the toad's disappearance, the remaining Konoha shinobi gathered around the body of their fallen hero and took him back to the village to be buried and honored as the great man that he was. Thankfully, a certain Sarutobi was able to gather little Naruto before anyone else could 2 days later. 2 days after the Kyuubi attack, the village was understandably still buzzing with activity. Nearly everyone was busy helping with repairs to the village, some parts more devastated than others from the fox's attacks and the conclusive shockwave. But even as the people were busy working, their mood was still somber since it was only yesterday that the funeral service for the Yondaime Hokage and the other shinobi that died was held. There virtually wasn't anyone in the village that didn't lose a loved one. Not to mention the loss of the village's greatest Hokage and hero had greatly affected every citizen of the Leaf and many others throughout the country. After the battle, it was decided by the Fire Daimyo and the Grand Fire Council that Hiruzen would retake his position as the Hokage. It was a bittersweet pill to swallow, but he knew it had to be done. At the end of the funeral, Hiruzen announced that Minato had defeated the Kyuubi by sealing its chakra into the body of a young child and that he had asked for him to be seen as a hero. Sadly, just as the old Hokage had feared, the wounds that the Kyuubi had caused by its destruction had caused the people to focus their anger and sorrow at the child. It got so bad to the point that many, out of fear, were shouting for the child's death, claiming the Kyuubi would take over its prison and kill them all. The rest that were asking of same thing seemed to want it done purely out of blinded revenge on the fox. This was stopped when the Sarutobi clan had released a massive amount of killing intent on the angry villagers, both civilian and ninja, causing all to immediately cower at his power. He spoke at how ashamed he was of how they reacted in their dishonoring of Minato's memory and sacrifice. Many had regrettably lowered their heads in shame, but there were plenty that simply shrugged off the feeling and stubbornly held on to their hate. Because of the heavy emotions, Hiruzen declared a new law stating that if anyone ever speaks out or mentions the Kyuubi and its connection to its container, especially to the younger generation, they would be charged with treason and would be executed immediately without trial, making the ordeal an S-class secret in Tsunade's private hospital room. Tsunade, still resting from giving birth, continued to slumber peacefully in her bed. She would have been awake at this point, especially given recent events, but Shizune decided to administer more sedatives to deal with the added stress that encumbered her to be safe. Hiruzen was at her side, quietly waiting since she was due to awaken any minute. It took a while, but her eyes eventually started to slowly open. Even with the drowsiness she was no doubt feeling, she suddenly gained a second wind and was alert as can be when she caught the form of her sensei. "Sensei, what are you doing here? Where's Shizune? Where's Naruto-chan? Where my baby?" said Tsunade, alarmed as she looked around. "Tsunade, please relax. You need to rest. Both Shizune and Naruto are fine," he said calmly, a mood she matched after a moment or two to gather her bearings. "Now, Tsunade, there is something I need to tell you. It seems that the birth caused a lot more stress to you than we had thought, and you have been asleep for 2 days. Also, sadly, when you were put to sleep, we came under attack by the Kyuubi. A jolt of shock ran through her body, but he continued before she could give a response. "But thankfully we were able to survive the attack and defeat it. She was surprised even further. It was truly hard to fathom how the Kyuubi was defeated since its power was legendary. No one short of her grandfather could evenly fight the fox, and even then he had his Makutan abilities to aid him. The only exception was one kunoichi named Uzumaki Kushina, who possessed a special chakra that allowed her to suppress the chakra of the tailed beasts and used it in conjunction with her chakra chain technique to restrain the creatures. Of course, more questions were raised in her mind since Kushina wasn't even around the village to properly deal with the threat. Hiruzen was able to guess her train of thought from the look of contemplation on her face and spoke. "We were able to defeat the Kyuubi thanks to Minato. He used a special jutsu he created that allowed him to rip the Kyuubi's soul out of its body and seal it into a child. That child, I am sad to tell you, was Naruto." At the very moment that he uttered the last syllable, the room quickly became flooded with a massive amount of killing intent. Hiruzen buckled a bit and even felt his breath escape him, despite the many years of such intent being felt by him over the years. That bastard. I'll kill him. I'll make him wish he was never born. I'll rip him apart till there's nothing but little chunks of left. How dare he do that, my child?" she roared as she started to get out of her bed. An aura of absolute fury surrounded her being, the likes of which could make any deity cower in fear. "Tsunade, please calm down. There are still things that you don't know yet and need to understand," Hiruzen pleaded as he blocked her warpath out the door and grabbed a hold of her arm. "I understand everything perfectly. That bastard sealed one of those monsters into my baby and turned him into a Jinchuriki, and you know damn well how they're treated. When I find that bastard, I'll. Tsunade, Minato's dead." Hiruzen interrupted. She paused where she stood. What? Hiruzen sighed sadly. "Minato is dead. The jutsu that he used to seal the Kyuubi into Naruto cost him his life," he answered. He went on to explain how the Shiki Fusion worked. When he finished explaining what happened in the battle, Tsunade took a moment to think and just growled in frustration. Her current fury was clouding her mind with the wishes to end the bastard herself, but she resigned to curse his soul to hell later. Right now she needed to be with her son. "Sensei, where's Naruto-chan now?" she asked calmly yet worryingly. "Don't worry. I have Shizune and Jiraiya watching him at the Namikaze estate. Can you take me to him? It was more a statement than question. Of course. After they stopped talking, Tsunade quickly got out of her hospital gown and got dressed into her normal attire. The two of them then left the room and snuck through the village, making sure that no one saw that the Senju was there. It didn't take long for them to reach the large mansion that had belonged to the Namikaze family since the founding of the village. The mansion was built behind the Hokage monument and was hidden from view by the tree line in front of it. It had a large open garden in the front of it and a swimming pool in the back. The mansion itself was a large marble four-story building with hundreds of windows and a double-door entrance that the walkway from the gate lead to. Just from taking a look at its stature, it could be seen to fit dozens of people easily. The Namikaze family had the home built when the village was first founded. The family wasn't a special shinobi clan and were in fact simple merchants who had come when Konoha was built and did well for themselves with the opportunities they were given. They ended up being the wealthiest merchant family in the village due to owning over 51% of the businesses amongst the population and controlled most of the trading infrastructure. Minato was the first member of the family to become a shinobi, and despite him choosing the militaristic profession, he was also skilled in running businesses thanks to training from his parents. It was because of this training that the blonde was able to keep the business tradition running smoothly after his parents were killed. Yet, regardless of owning everything built from his family over the years, he hadn't lived on the magnificent property in a long time. He much preferred to have his own independence after he was promoted to Chunin. That choice was hammered down even more so after the passing of his parents. The memory of their murder would have been a constant and dark reminder in the home, no matter how much he renovated and cleaned the spot where they met their end. Even sealing off the room and ignoring it wouldn't have been enough. That didn't mean he forgot his place of kin, though. He still took the time to use the library when it was needed and even constructed a room to store all of the scrolls that held the techniques he gathered or created over the course of his career. When they entered the mansion, Tsunade and the Sandaime went into the main living room where Jiraiya and Shizune were taking care of Naruto. When the new mother saw her child with Shizune, she quickly raced over to him and desperately scooped him up. She held and squeezed him with all of the love she could project as if he would disappear from the slightest loosening of her grip. "My baby. Thank the stars that you're okay." She happily cried before she looked down and examined the 3 whisker marks on both sides of his cheek. "Is this result of the sealing?" Tsunade asked Jiraiya. "Yes it is, but don't worry about it. He won't be sprouting any fox ears or a tail if that's what you're wondering. It's normal to see a trait like that in Jinchuriki since it's sort of a way to show their connection to a specific bijou. And don't worry about the Kyuubi harming him in any way. Minato placed the Hekno Funshiki on him and there aren't many seals stronger than that. Jiraiya would have continued in his praise of Minato's skill as a seal master but stopped when Tsunade started to growl at him. The praise was just a quick reminder of what happened to her son. Jiraiya wasn't surprised that Tsunade felt this way. Despite his good intentions, Minato had placed a very heavy burden on their son, and he doubted Tsunade would ever forgive Minato for what he did. "So what happens now?" Shizune timidly asked from the side. "It's simple, we're leaving. I'm not going to stay here and let my son become the village outcast simply because of what that bastard did him. I have no doubt that the villagers and many of the shinobi here will claim he is a demon and try to hurt him in any way possible," Tsunade snarled, daring either Jiraiya or the Sandaime to say otherwise. Jiraiya remained silent since he actually agreed with her. The people wouldn't take too kindly to Naruto's presence. A seed of contempt was planted in the hearts of many villagers and their future intentions could be dangerous if the newborn were to remain in his birthplace. Hiruzen knew this too well as he saw the reactions many had when details of the fox's defeat were revealed. "You don't have to worry, Tsunade. I won't stop you from leaving if you really wish to do so. In fact, you have my full support," Hiruzen said resolutely. His students were clearly surprised, expecting him to instead argue and convince Tsunade to place her trust in the citizens of Konoha. "What's the deal, sensei? I always pictured you as an idealist," asked Jiraiya. "I am, but the sad truth is I know in my heart that if Naruto stayed he would be an outcast. I promised Minato that I would do everything in my power to see that both Tsunade and Naruto would be safe and the best way to do that is to let them leave the village. But wouldn't they see him differently if you announced his heritage? I'm sure they wouldn't think of him as a demon or hate him if they knew that he was Tsunade-sama and the Yondaime's son. Other than Tsunade-sama, he is now the last Senju alive and the son of Konoha's hero," Shizune stated. Hiruzen straightened up. Although that could happen, that would just place Naruto in more danger. If word about him leaked out, eventually other villages and shinobi groups would target him. With his lineage and containing the most powerful of the Bijou, all kinds of enemies would stop at nothing to capture or kill him at every chance they get. This is more concerning with Konoha's military strength weakening as well, so all things considered it's best that he isn't here. But I heard that you forbade anyone from speaking of the fox. Besides, you didn't say who the child was exactly, so no one knows that Naruto is the container. Couldn't you just reveal Naruto's heritage to them without revealing the fact that he has the Kyuubi sealed into him? Shizune inquired. That wouldn't work. The villagers would notice the markings on his cheeks and the shinobi that have knowledge in sealing would easily connect the dots due to his age. Word would spread and we'd have to deal with the consequences, and that's just within the village. Outside forces beyond our walls and country would be a given. Shizune looked a little confused, but Jiraiya and Tsunade understood his words quite well. For the young Kunoichi's sake, Hiruzen explained further. It's simple. If the people of Konoha knew that Naruto was Minato and Tsunade's son, they would treat him like royalty and spoil him rotten. He would become a spoiled and arrogant child that would believe that just because he is the heir of a prestigious clan, he'd be handed power and strength on a silver platter and not value hard work, determination and training. He might even look down on others and believe he is their better by default. There'd even be several factions in Konoha that would seek to use his future power and influence. Hiruzen let out an annoyed scoff. The most notable would be Danzo. Jiraiya's face grew serious and Tsunade even felt a small snarl coming along at the back of her throat from the mere mention of the old warhawk. He has already requested to give him custody of the child containing the Kyuubi so that he can train him to become a shinobi. I'm certain under his care Naruto would become an emotionless boy who would answer only to Danzo himself. Especially if he knew who his parents are and the political and business impact that he'd carry. Take everything regarding Naruto into account and Danzo could potentially have all of Konoha under his control as a potential Hokage. I know that you all see this as a disastrous scenario. Shizune couldn't help but mentally shudder at the thought of her godson held best, and from what her master told her the further away he was from Naruto the better. Like I'd ever let that one-eyed bastard even touch a hair on my Naru-chan. I'll rip out his remaining eye and arm myself if he even thinks about it. Tsunade carefully and angrily muttered back, hoping to not wake up Naruto. That is why it's best that you both leave the village for now. It'd be best if you keep a low profile. We can't risk any suspicion before we are able to properly handle it, Hiruzen responded. Tsunade simply nodded before she spoke. Is there anything else, sensei? I'd like to get out of here as soon as I can. Yes, there is something I like to say. Now, as Jiraiya already knows. Before Minato died he left me as executor to the Namikaze estate in which he has named Naruto as heir to the Namikaze family fortune as well as everything that he owned. Won't the council try and seize it for themselves since they don't think Minato-sama has an heir? Shizune asked. They've already tried but I overruled them. Even if they don't know Naruto will inherit everything when he's older I still have absolute say over what happens to Minato's possessions. Speaking of which, who'll manage the businesses that belong to the Namikazes since I doubt you will? Tsunade asked Hiruzen. They'll be handled by Seiwa Genji. He helped Minato's father manage them and continued to overlook them when he died and Minato inherited it all. He was a good and loyal friend to the family so we don't have to worry. Everything will continue to run correctly, but he'll be left in the dark about Naruto in case there's a chance he might let his identity slip or someone trying to force information out of him. I believe you should also know that Minato has requested in his will that I have all your debts paid off through the Namikaze fortune. Tsunade and Shizune felt shock overtake them. And before you try and refuse you don't need to worry about negatively affecting Naruto's inheritance. Even as high as your debts are they won't make that big of a dent in the family fortune. Minato also set up a trust fund for Naruto which will be paid monthly to you and should be enough to allow you three to live simple but comfortable lives even if you travel around which seems like what you'll be doing, Hiruzen ended. After a few moments Tsunade and Shizune got over their shock and as much as the Senju hated to admit, she was grateful for Minato getting rid of all her debts and taking care of them all. However, she would never truly forgive him for turning their son into a sacrifice regardless of how noble or selfless his reasons were. Well, if that's all, sensei, I think that once Shizune and I get everything we need to take care of Naruto we'll leave tonight, Tsunade said, all while gently rocking her son. There is one last thing I would like to say, Tsunade, Hiruzen started, causing Tsunade to raise an eyebrow. I know that you have good reasons to keep Naruto away from Konoha. But I would like you to consider allowing him to become a shinobi of Konoha when he's old enough. Tsunade looked ready to argue. Before you speak against it, you have to remember that the blood of some of the greatest shinobi in the world including yourself runs through Naruto's veins. Following the path of a shinobi is instilled in him and I highly doubt that you could stop him even if you tried to. Naruto has the potential to become as great a shinobi as your grandfather, great uncle and his father, maybe even greater. And he'll need the support of Konoha behind him to help him with whatever enemies he will face. He'll need to be here to claim and protect his fortune and other heirlooms like the Hiraishin scroll anyway, so building a connection would be ideal for everyone. At the very least he'll be able to make sure his property doesn't fall into the wrong hands. Tsunade frowned, but she had to admit he had a point. After a few minutes of carefully thinking Tsunade spoke. I won't make any promises of his future in Konoha, but I'll think about it. We will definitely be back to claim his inheritance, though, so a decision will be made by then. That's all I ask, Hiruzen replied with a smile. I think I'll head out as well, sensei. It's best that I travel and reconnect with my spy network. We have to keep an ear out for anyone that might catch wind of anything related to Naruto or Hime. It'd be smart to look for any threats in the future too, Jiraiya said. Hiruzen offered them all a smile. Very well, I wish you both the best of luck. Don't worry, we'll keep you posted on how we are doing, Tsunade assured. 3 hours later when the night sky had fully loomed over Konoha, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Shizune and Naruto snuck out of the village with none being the wiser. As they left the Sandaime was looking out the window of his office and at the star-filled night heavens. I look forward to the day of your return, Naruto, for I have no doubt we'll be seeing great things coming from you just like your mother, father and your ancestors, he thought with a slight smile. He then turned to look at the pictures of his predecessors, all of them sharing the same blood as the whiskered blonde. After a few minutes of silent staring and thinking, Hiruzen decided to head home and finally get some rest. Ba, babbled baby Naruto as he finished eating his mashed banana with his fingers and got about half of it around his face and on his bed. Good boy Naru-chan, you ate all you bananas. Although you got at least half it on your face and clothes you little devil you, cooed Tsunade as she went to pick up Naruto out of his high chair and smiled at him. Ma, babbled Naruto as he saw his mother coming to pick him up, to which he giggled as she lifted him out of his chair. You're a messy little boy aren't you, aren't Naru-chan? Tsunade continued to coo as she looked down at her messy son who just giggled more. Then put one of his fingers in his mouth to make himself look innocent and more adorable. She just shook her head and smiled slightly. You're just like your father, a real charmer when you want to be. Naruto laughed and clapped his small hands together as if agreeing with her. Shizune. I'm going into the next room to change Naru-chan out of his messy clothes. Will you please clean his high chair up and put it away while I'm doing that? Tsunade called as she went to the next room. Certainly Tsunade-sensei, Shizune answered from the kitchen. As Tsunade was changing Naruto out of his dirty clothes, she thought about when she left Konoha and when Naruto was born. During that time not much had happened since Tsunade made sure to keep a low profile. This past year she had traveled mainly around Fire Country and the other smaller nations with baby Naruto and Shizune. They would stay in small villages, towns, or cities for a few months before they would move off again, not wanting to attract unwanted attention. When they traveled or was not in the privacy of her current home, she would put a special henge over herself and Shizune to change their appearance to everyone but Naruto so that he would not get scared or confused when he did not recognize them. This was to make sure that if someone was looking for them, they would be unable to know where to start looking. As they traveled to different places she would offer her services as a healer to people with different illness or injuries. Though she did not need the money since the money Minato had set up for Sarutobi to send them through her slug summons was enough to allow them to live simple but comfortable lives. Tsunade did it because it made her happy and gave her something to do when not caring or playing with Naruto. Also during the year, Naruto was growing up to be a very active child. He loved to play around in his playpen with his different toys, and when he started crawling about 3 months ago he could hardly stay in the same place for too long. He would also grab anything he could get his hands on and that he could put in his mouth. On more than one occasion, Tsunade and Shizune had just barely stopped Naruto from swallowing or choking a coin, a marble, and other small objects. He also had a knack for getting into trouble. On several occasions Naruto somehow climbed up onto a chair, table, or even a shelf whenever he saw something he wanted on them. This resulted in him nearly falling off and getting hurt each time, but thankfully Tsunade or Shizune were able to catch him and keep him from getting hurt. Though Tsunade nearly had a heart attack each and every time it happened. It was after the second one of those incidents that both Shizune and she decided that one of them would always have Naruto within eyesight for their own peace of mind. After Tsunade finished changing Naruto, she lifted him up in her arms and cooed, "Now that you're nice and clean again, you're a handsome boy. Aren't you my little Naru-chan?" Naruto just replied by squealing in delight and clapping his hand again. Tsunade then went out to the main room where Shizune was just finishing putting away Naruto's high chair. She then went to sit down on a chair and began to loosen up her robes and lowered the strap to her bra to expose her left breast. She then brought Naruto up to it so that he could start feeding. After which Shizune then went to another chair opposite Tsunade and began to read a new medical book she had recently bought. It was just about 5 minutes after Tsunade began that someone suddenly came through the open window that was next to her. With Tsunade so engrossed with feeding Naruto and Shizune in her book, both of them failed to notice the intruder. When the intruder saw Tsunade's current manifestation and what she was doing, he suddenly let out a large cry. After which the intruder was sent across the room by a massive nosebleed and hit the wall hard, knocking the intruder out. When the two women heard the cry and the thud of the intruder hitting the wall, they both immediately sprung into action. Tsunade went into a protective stance covering Naruto, who was crying after being interrupted from his feeding time. While Shizune went into an offensive stance with her senbon needles out and ready. When the two women looked over at the unconscious intruder, Tsunade growled under her breath angrily and began muttering curses upon seeing whom their guest was. Said intruder was twitching a little with blood coming from his nose and a very perverted smile on his face and drool coming from his mouth. Of all of people and of all times, Tsunade said sourly as her right eye twitched several times, he had to show up unannounced. Jiraiya-sama, Shizune said a bit worriedly as she went over to the now unconscious toad hermit. Shizune, leave him until I at least finish feeding Naru-chan. The last thing I need is that perverted toad watching me as I'm feeding the baby, Tsunade angrily said as she tried to calm down the still crying Naruto. Shizune just nodded in acknowledgement and went into the kitchen to get a few things to treat the toad hermit while her sensei finished. 20 minutes later. After Jiraiya had regained consciousness and his composure, long after Tsunade had fully fixed her robes. Tsunade tried to force Jiraiya to clean up the mess he made, but Shizune volunteered to do herself, saying that she didn't want to risk Naruto catching anything from him. Tsunade was sitting at a table with Naruto being cradled in her arms and Jiraiya was across from them. He was smiling as he looked at them since the memory of Tsunade breastfeeding Naruto was still fresh on his mind. "Why are you here anyway, Jiraiya?" Tsunade inquired with a slight frown. She was still a bit annoyed with him for arriving unannounced in the way he did. "Can't a man come every now and then to visit his godson?" asked the smiling sage. "Not in the way you do," Tsunade deadpanned. Hime, don't say that, you make me feel unwanted. Besides, if I had announced my arrival then I wouldn't have been treated with the heavenly sight that I saw not long ago, Jiraiya replied, grinning like no tomorrow. The boy's living a genuine privilege that is not given to just anyone. I envy his good fortune. Tsunade frowned and snarled at Jiraiya, not missing the perverted meanings behind his statements, while Shizune looked at the older man in disgust. "If I wasn't holding Naru-chan right now you would be halfway flying to Suna right now," Tsunade said through narrowed eyes. Jiraiya just chuckled nervously and decided to change the subject as to why he was really here. "Alright Hime, all joking aside, you're right, there is a reason why I'm here," Jiraiya spoke, all humor leaving his face. Immediately Shizune and Tsunade straightened up and began to listen intently to what Jiraiya had to say. "As you both know, I left the village to reconnect with my spy network to keep an ear open for any news about anything that may concern you or the Gaki here," Jiraiya said while motioning to Naruto. Both of them nodded since they knew this, although Tsunade did frown at Naruto being called a Gaki but decided to let it slide for now. Currently the other villages are watching Konoha closely to see how badly the military strength was hit during the Kyuubi attack and the loss of Minato. Thankfully Sensei's been able to keep the other villages in the dark about how badly Konoha was hurt, so as far as the other villages are concerned Konoha is still strong. Plus, Konoha's alliance with Suna is also another thing to make the other villages hesitant to try anything. So I don't believe that they'll try to attack the village, Jiraiya informed, to which Tsunade just nodded for him to continue. Also, no one knows about you having Naruto, so I don't think you have to worry about anyone coming after him anytime soon. But you should still lay low like you've been doing since we don't want any trouble, especially at this point in time, to which Tsunade was in complete agreement. Another thing I learned just last month, some new group is coming out. They're keeping below the radar so to not attract attention and are highly secretive. From what my informants tell me they'll be big trouble in a couple of years. What do you mean by that? Asked Tsunade. The group is currently made up of 6 missing nin and not your run-of-the-mill missing nin. These guys are all S-class missing nin, replied Jiraiya. This shocked both the women present. S-class missing nin was the highest types of ninjas there were, except for few others who was credited with being given a double S-class rank. Those being Tsunade's grandfather Senju Hashirama, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Hashirama's arch-rival and nemesis Uchiha Madara, and Naruto's father, Namikaze Minato. It made Tsunade especially worried since shinobi of that caliber rarely ever try to work together since they usually end up fighting or killing one another. The only way for any of them to willing work together would be if they were being led by someone stronger than any of them. Tsunade was worried because anyone that was able to get 5 other S-class missing nin working together would have to be incredibly powerful. Do you know who the members are? Tsunade asked. I known one member but that's it. The rest I don't since like I said, the group is highly secretive, responded Jiraiya. Who is the member that you know of? Our old teammate, Orochimaru. Tsunade frowned upon hearing this. Although she was not there when Orochimaru's treasonous acts were revealed by Sarutobi, she had heard about them not long after. Although she had severed her ties with Konoha, his betrayal still hurt her. He was still her friend at one point. I'm surprised he would be willing to work with others again considering he usually prefers to work alone, spoke Tsunade. My guess is it was a matter of convenience. They most likely protected him and helped him elude the Oinen and us. But knowing Orochimaru, he'll most likely betray them like he did us when it suits him best. Tsunade just nodded her head in agreement. So what exactly do they call themselves? Surely their group goes by some kind of name, and what exactly do they want since S-class missing nins wouldn't really work together without some kind of reason, Shizune asked. They call themselves the Akatsuki and you can recognize them by what they wear. They all dress in the similar outfit, each member wears dark cloaks with red clouds with a red interior, H and high collar. And wear a conical straw hat with small spike-like balls hanging down to cover their faces. As for their plans, I don't really know for certain, but from what my sources tell me they're going after Jinchuriki. To be more precise, they're after the Bijus inside the Jinchuriki, Jiraiya answered, shocking both women and causing Tsunade to hold on to Naruto tightly. Are you certain, Jiraiya? Asked the worried Tsunade, to which the sage just nodded. My advice, Tsunade, is that if you ever see anyone who matches the Akatsuki description, get out and run as far away as you can. Although you could possibly take on and beat one of them, but these guys travel in pairs. When you see one, the other is not far behind, and not even you could take on 2 S-class nin by yourself and protect Shizune and Naruto simultaneously. Tsunade could not help but reluctantly agree with what Jiraiya had said. Do you know what they want the Bijus for? No, I don't, but whatever it is I bet it not good. But despite this there is some good news, since they have no idea about who the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi is. Sensei's keeping a tight lip on it all. They know for sure that the Kyuubi is sealed into a child, but they don't know which one, and not counting Sensei we are the only ones that know that Naruto is Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. As long as that is kept a secret, they shouldn't come after him. This of course gave Tsunade some relief, but the nagging fear in the pit of her stomach was still there. Also, from what I have gathered, they won't make any real move against any of the other Jinchuriki for a while, since they are still trying to recruit more members for their group and funds for financing the operations, whatever they are. It'd be a few years before they make any real move against anyone, and it means we still have time to prepare Naruto. Which got a look from Tsunade that said he better not be talking about what she thought he was thinking of. Now Tsunade, don't give me that look. I know you don't want to hear this, but you have to, since it for Naruto's good as well as everyone else's. The Akatsuki members are no amateurs. They will eventually figure or find out that Naruto is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, and when they do they will come after him. So when Naruto is old enough we will have to train Naruto to be a shinobi. At this point Tsunade was about to interrupt, telling him no, but before she could, Jiraiya cut her off and continued. Tsunade, like Sensei said, Naruto has the blood of some of the strongest shinobi to ever exist running through his veins, with you being among them as well. I doubt you could stop him from becoming one, and the stronger he becomes the better his and our chances are against the Akatsuki when they do finally come. Also Naruto will have to learn sooner or later that because of whom he is who he related to and what he is, he will always have to watch his back. There will always be those who will want to either use or destroy him because of what he may one day become, said Jiraiya with finality. After Jiraiya finished speaking, Tsunade remained quiet and just looked down at her son, who had finally stopped squirming and was falling asleep in her arms. As she did, she found herself silently cursing Minato for the 1000th time for turning her son into a Jinchuriki. After several minutes of just looking down at her sleeping son, Tsunade finally looked back up at Jiraiya. When she did, Jiraiya saw a look of determination in her eyes that he had not seen in many years. If that's the case, then so be it. When he is old enough, we will both train him. If any of these Akatsuki bastard try and take my son from me, they will have to go through me first, and they will find out firsthand why I am a Sannin, said Tsunade with a fire of determination in her eyes. Jiraiya saw this and just smiled and nodded. He could see that the love she had for Naruto and her maternal instincts to protect her child had reignited Tsunade's fighting spirit, one that he thought had long been extinguished. Shizune herself also made a silent vow as well to help with Naruto's training. Although she was not as strong or knowledgeable as either Jiraiya or Tsunade, she would help to protect her godson in whatever way she could. That night, Tsunade was sleeping peacefully in her room. All was serene until Naruto started crying in his crib. Tsunade woke up to this and got up off her futon. Going over to Naruto, Tsunade picked him up and held him, resting his head on her shoulders while gently rocking him in her arms. Naruto soon calmed down and quieted, much to Tsunade's delight. After another minute, Tsunade said thoughtfully, I bet you're hungry, my little Naru-chan. Tsunade sat down on her futon with Naruto and prepared to breastfeed him. Just as she was about to open her night kimono, the door to her room opened, revealing Shizune cradling something in her arms. I'm sorry, Tsunade-sensei, Shizune said. I came in earlier to change Naruto's diaper when you were sleeping, and I was just bringing him back now. I didn't want to wake you. Tsunade then saw that Shizune was cradling a fully awake Naruto in her arms. When the slug Sannin saw that, she knew that something was definitely wrong with this scene. Wait a minute, Tsunade exclaimed. If that's Naruto, then who am I? Looking down at her arms, Tsunade saw that she was cradling a wooden log in her arms. While cradling the log, she turned and saw Naruto quietly attempting to crawl and sneak away from her towards the opened window. As Naruto was making his way towards the window, he then felt an extreme bloodlust approaching and coming from behind him, as well as the sickening cracking of knuckles that became infamous whenever Tsunade was about to dish out a lot of pain. As he fearfully and slowly turned his head, he thought of one word that he thought might have saved him with puppy dog eyes and the sucking of his right thumb, mama. Sadly it did not work, and Tsunade sent him soaring out the open window, where she quickly followed after him. The same small figure came crashing hard into the ground, forming a crater in it. The figure transformed back into his real self and was in much pain. He felt several of his bones break and was sore all over. OOWW, Jiraiya mourned. So close, damn that Shizune. I was just a few seconds away from paradise, and I was really looking forward to having some of that good stuff she treats Naruto to. But before Jiraiya could finish what he was saying, he suddenly felt a dark shadow hovering over him, as well as a familiar bloodlust and killer intent on him again. He slowly and fearfully turned around and was again faced with Tsunade, who had a sadistically sweet smile on her face again. You didn't think you'd get off that easy, did you? Tsunade asked rhetorically as she hovered over him. As she came closer to him, Jiraiya could only whisper one word. Mercy. But sadly for the Toad Hermit, there would be none. For about 10 minutes, terrifying screams of pain and abject misery could be heard by all who were still awake, several miles away. A young couple who were quietly looking up at the full moon and a bright star in the night, when suddenly the women pointed up at a small object was soaring through the air. Look, it's a shooting star, let's make a wish. I don't think that a shooting star, sweetheart, said the man. Then what is it? Asked the women. I don't know, he replied when suddenly a loud ear-splitting cry. Yahoo-hoo-hoo-hooey, several miles further away. The shooting star then came crashing hard into the ground, forming yet another crater. The shooting star was in fact Jiraiya, who slowly crawled out of the crater before checking himself for whatever additional damages that was done to him by Tsunade's beating in as a result from the impact to the ground. In any case, he was in for a long crawl back to Tsunade house in a whole world of pain. Meanwhile, back where Jiraiya first landed, a very pissed off Tsunade was standing outside the first crater Jiraiya landed in and looking up at the night sky. Damn perverted excuse for a life form, Tsunade stated. I just might kill him if he pulls that stunt again. After which she then went back to the house to kiss her son goodnight before going to bed again. 1 month later. A month after Jiraiya came to give to his news on the Akatsuki and his failed attempt to be briefed by Tsunade, things settled down again. The house even had one new occupant, said occupant being Jiraiya. He had decided to stay for a little while to spend some time with his godson and get to know him a little. In which case, he acted as part-time babysitter whenever Tsunade and Shizune were out helping to treat the villagers. Both women agreed to allow Jiraiya to babysit on the condition that he not try and corrupt Naruto into becoming a pervert like him under the threat of castration and disembowelment with dulcune and bare hands. It was after a long day from healing a large number of people who had traveled from the outer parts of the village to get Tsunade to treat their various ailments that when she and Shizune came back to the house to find Jiraiya watching Naruto, the baby was playing with 3 small summon toads that Jiraiya had summoned for Naruto to play with, which Naruto loved doing since he would waddle after the toads as they hop around the room with him trying to catch them. When Naruto saw his mother and Shizune, he squealed happy and waddled over to him mother to hug her, and as he went over to her he said mama, which surprised them since they did not expect Naruto to speak this way for few more months, since he had shown no real signs of trying to speak other than babbling. Tsunade then picked up Naruto and asked, "What did you say, Naru-chan?" Mama repeated the blonde baby. This caused her to hug and cry in joy for her son at speaking his first real word. "What a smart boy you are, Naru-chan. You only started walking a few weeks ago and now you're starting to talk." "Naruto, can you say Hakubo auntie? Can you?" asked Shizune as she gained Naruto attention. "Nei-chan, Nei-chan," Naruto said. "I doubt you'd get any better than that, Shizune." Tsunade chuckled. "Oh well, I guess being his Nei-chan isn't so bad," replied Shizune as she grabbed little Naruto nose and wiggled it a little, which made him laugh. "Hey Naruto, do you know who I am? Do you?" asked an excited Jiraiya when he came up to Naruto to find out what he'd call him. "Pervert, pervert," replied Naruto as he pointed at Jiraiya, causing the sage to face fault and Shizune to giggle loudly while Tsunade smiled and laughed even harder. "That's my little boy, such a smart boy, just like his Ka-chan," laughed Tsunade as she turned around to go into the kitchen with Naruto. "I resent that remark. I'm not a pervert," cried Jiraiya as he stood up. "Then what are you?" asked Tsunade, turning around slightly. "I'm a super pervert," grinned Jiraiya, after which an annoyed Tsunade elbowed him in the face and sent him flying to the other end of the room, resulting in him hitting the wall. "Damn pervert," muttered Tsunade as she went to the kitchen with Naruto and Shizune following closely behind. 1 month later. Currently Jiraiya was in Tsunade's house watching over Naruto again. Tsunade and Shizune had gone out to a small farm several miles out of the village to help the daughter of the farmer who was severely ill and in need of treatment. As he was watching Naruto, he was also trying to come up with new ideas for his latest book, but unfortunately he was having a severe case of writer's block. After a while he decided to take a walk around the village since he thought that the fresh air and exercise would do him good and re-energize his writer's imagination. As he walked around the streets of the town carrying Naruto, many young girls and women came over to him when they saw him carrying him. They started to surround them, commenting on how cute he was and adorable his whisker marks made him. Soon enough Jiraiya quickly realized that Naruto was a babe magnet and began cursing himself for not thinking of the sooner. After the women that had surrounded him and Naruto left, Jiraiya quickly ran to the village hot springs entrance where he knew that most women came out at this time to go home for the night and quickly put his plan into action. When Jiraiya saw a group of women coming out of the hot springs, he quickly acted as though he was about to enter himself. Jiraiya began to hum when the women ran toward him, commenting on how cute Naruto was. "Yes ladies, he is very cute, isn't he?" queried Jiraiya. "Is he yours?" asked the random woman. "Why no, he isn't. He's actually my godson." The women then began to swoon over Naruto, commenting how adorable he was with his whisker marks or how beautiful his eyes were, and asking more questions about him to Jiraiya, who was far too busy looking at their breasts to answer any of their questions. As all this was happening, Naruto grew more and more confused as to why all these strange ladies were surrounding him. Unfortunately, the confused look that appeared on his face made him all the more adorable to the women, who began to pinch his cheeks and ruffle his spiky hair. Jiraiya smiled as he continued to ogle the swooning and silently thanked Kami for his godson's cuteness. Things seemed as though they were only going to get better when Naruto tried to grab onto the women's finger with his small little hand, which earned him even more attention from the women. "Oh, he's trying to grab my finger, he's so adorable, isn't he?" said a brunette woman. Naruto, who was still a little confused at where he was, but when he looked up to see his godfather smiling back at him, he immediately giggled and decided to enjoy all the attention and began to bounce up and down in his godfather's arms, which only made the women attract to him even more. Jiraiya couldn't believe that Naruto could get him this much action and made a mental note to hint to Tsunade that he could watch him whenever she needed him to. Jiraiya began to think about how he could milk this even further when he suddenly remembered the time when Naruto wouldn't stop crying when he first babysat for Tsunade and he summoned a toad witch. He almost squeezed into oblivion. Jiraiya smirked and patted himself on the back for his brilliant thinking, and then quickly summoned a small toad and ordered the toad to hop into Naruto's view. While Naruto was hopping up and down in Jiraiya's grasp, the toad jumped onto Jiraiya's shoulder. Naruto immediately stopped bouncing when he saw the toad and began to reach for it. The women awed at Naruto's actions and became even more infatuated with the young boy when he was able to get a hold of the toad and began hugging it for dear life. Unfortunately, as Jiraiya was busy trying to make his move on the young village women, Tsunade and Shizune were entering the village after finishing with helping to treat the daughter of the farmer. They then decided to head for the hot spring to relax a little before returning home, since they believed that they deserved a little downtime after helping the young girl. When they were nearing the hot spring entrance, they saw a large group of women surrounding a tall white-haired man with a small blonde-haired boy in his arms who was squeezing a poor toad to near death. Tsunade quickly realized that the blonde boy was her son and the tall white-haired man was Jiraiya. She then quickly realized that Jiraiya must have been using her son to attract women. When she realized this, one thing was on her mind: kill Jiraiya slow and painfully. As Jiraiya was about to make a move on the women, he suddenly felt a sense of dread wash over him and realized that his teammate must be somewhere nearby. Jiraiya's fears were confirmed when he turned around and saw Tsunade stomping right towards him with a very angry Shizune right behind her. She too knew what Jiraiya was doing with her nephew, little brother godson, and for once she would not try and calm Tsunade down. She would actually help her kill Jiraiya. "Hi Saiyawan, what's up?" asked a very nervous Jiraiya. "Oh, not much. I was just coming back from helping that young farm girl who got ill and decided to come here to relax a little, and then I saw you and Naru-chan here. I was just wondering why you were here when I thought you'd be at home," said Tsunade all too sweetly for Jiraiya taste. "Oh. Well, you see, I just wanted to spend some time with him. And as you can see, he is very happy," spoke Jiraiya nervously as he tried to come up with a good excuse so to avoid being beaten to a pulp by Tsunade and probably Shizune as well. When Tsunade looked at Naruto, he was indeed happily squeezing a poor toad to death. "Well, Jiraiya, tell your friends goodbye because we need to get Naruto back home before it gets too late, since it's nearly his bedtime," said Tsunade with a look in her eyes that promised pain when they got back. Jiraiya informed the women that he and Naruto had to go, and all the women sighed, though, knowing that the boy's mother wanted him home. So they reluctantly said goodbye to the pair. "So Saya, let's get going," said Jiraiya. "Oh, I agree wholeheartedly," said Tsunade, who took Naruto away from Jiraiya, who began to walk away. "And just where are you going, Jiraiya?" said Shizune, who was twirling her senbon needles, which made Jiraiya very nervous. "Back to the house like you said. Oh, we have a much quicker way for us to get there," said Tsunade. Tsunade and Shizune each then placed their hand on Jiraiya's shoulders, and the four of them were shunshined back home. "Well, Tsunade, I should get going. You can put Naruto to bed and I'll go myself, since I better get back on the road again," Jiraiya quickly said and tried to get away, but Tsunade grabbed him by the collar and forced him to the ground. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya and then told Shizune to put Naruto to bed while she had a talk with the terrified Toad Sage. Shizune left the room with Naruto, who was cuddling the toad, while Jiraiya pleaded with Tsunade. "Shizune, before you put Naruto to bed, see if he might be hungry," said Tsunade as she began to crack her knuckles. "I will, sensei, but please save a piece of him for me, please," Shizune replied as she went to the next room. I'll try but no promises. Hime, I'm sorry, I just wanted to take Naruto to meet some new people, that's all I swear, pleaded Jiraiya on bended knees. I see. Jiraiya, I would like you to meet someone that you are very familiar with. Who? The end of my fist. After which for the next hour screams of pain from a certain super pervert could be heard for several miles around. And guys, this is the end. I hope you guys enjoyed. See you next video.